Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Memories, written by Zalurka. Does anyone remember? The conversation around the table stopped. His crew was used to the captain's strange moments, but this was new. The first officer finally replied, "Of course we do." Remember what exactly? It had been a long supply run, and we were all enjoying some much-needed R&R in our favorite bar. The captain had found a really old bottle of bourbon somewhere, and slowly been working his way through it as the night grew longer. By now the bar was empty, and everyone was enjoying the quiet, making small talk. "No, does anyone remember what didn't happen anymore?" We looked at him curiously. The bottle was not even half empty. The captain was not a heavy drinker, but this was not drunk talk. This was something else. "I see I'm not making sense. You know that feeling that you are certain you remember locking your cabin door, but you also have this worrying memory of just putting it shut and walking away?" "Oh, I get it. I often do that with tools. That's why I'm so serious about immediately putting them back in their spot after use," the chief engineer laughed. "You are a bit obsessive about that." His assistant grinned at that. "Yes, almost like that, but I mean bigger things. Do any of you remember the events that happened, and then not happened all of a sudden, and now you remember them differently?" We all looked at each other, and finally at the captain. "Can't say that we do, Captain," he sighed, took a sip of his bourbon, and then looked at the rest of the room before leading in. "So none of you remember the war?" We laughed. "Which one?" "The war against the Hunsec Empire." Now, this was confusing. No, sir. Hunsec Empire? Is this some ancient Terran history?" No. It happened around 15 years ago. Nasty thing. We almost lost until we didn't. Then, all of a sudden, it never happened." Now, this was definitely not his usual tale. The captain was a naval veteran and had fought in numerous wars and hunted pirates and privateers across the Arm. "Sir, I served in the Navy in the same time as you did, and I have no memory of a military operation by that name. Was this some covert operation that you were a part of? If so, I would suggest that you—" "It was not covert. We were all involved. I somehow remember the frigate that you were serving on lost at the siege of Carnassus. At the same time, I remember meeting up with you for a few drinks at Eden 4. I remember that night. You ended up taking 2 strippers home with you and accidentally getting married to both. Fleet Command was almost apoplectic when they found out." The table laughed, cheering the captain on. The captain grinned. "I definitely remember that. I thought I was seeing double." Then his smile faded away. "But I also remember the Danhauser ramming the Hunsec dreadnought and halting their assault long enough for us to break through to the planet." The laughing around the table stopped. The science officer leaned in and ignored the first officer's disapproving stare. "Okay, I'll bite. How is that possible, if it is? And who were the Huntlek?" "The Hunsec, tall reptiloids from the Gullneck cluster. Hive mind. They originated from a tightly grouped clump of stars in the center of the cluster. 6 of them, all less than 2 light years apart. They settled all the stars in the cluster using light travel. Then they spent the next few centuries waging a vicious interstellar war against each other over resources." He took another sip from his glass. This was getting interesting. "Until the Basenji research vessel discovered them and was promptly overrun. The damn pseudo-canines never stood a chance. Their captain was not even able to scuttle their ship, giving the Hunsec access to FTL drives, star maps, and some very advanced tech. They didn't waste time to incorporate the weaponry into their ships, adapt them for FTL, and conquer the other 5 stars in their system, and promptly turned their attention to the rest of the Arm. Wiped out 3 other races in less than 2 years, then met us. We battled them for almost 3 more, slowly losing ground, until some egghead scientist wiped them out with an exotic superweapon." The science officer and navigation officer shared a glance, and then one of them said, "Are you referring to the Gullneck Void, sir? That strange bubble of stellar gas in Gliese 5. My astronomy professor once called it a failed stellar nursery, a massive clump of gas that should have formed stars but never did." The captain nodded. "That's the one. I also remember that. But I also remember intelligence briefings showing that there were at least 6 stars in them. Like I said, exotic superweapon." They were like locusts, swarming into a system, overwhelming any defenses, then taking over any habitable planets and strip mining the rest for resources. If you were not a huntleg, you were either an obstacle or a resource. So, what happened next, Captain? We had advance warning from their previous conquests, but you would receive initial messages from the invaded systems, then silence. Everyone underestimated the sheer scale of their armadas and their path. They were spiraling out from Gullneck, concentrating their forces on each territory before moving on. It only became obvious once they hit Terran space, and hit they did. The first systems hit were mining and trade outposts. Most did not have more than a chance to send out a distress call. Then we assembled a fleet at the Demeter to stop them. It was a rout. They were just too many. We switched tactics then, scouting out and performing hit-and-run strikes. Also, deep sabotage, trying to slow them down. That did not help. They were like the von Neumann probes they once talked about. Any system they overrun would quickly turn into a self-contained horde, building up more ships and striking out, looking for more resources. Settled systems, empty systems, they took them all. We tried to negotiate with them, open lines of communication. They did not care. They definitely understood us. Some of their attacks had to be based on intelligence they obtained by interrogating senior Navy staff. We really thought that we could negotiate with them, until someone was able to broadcast footage out of Centauri's 9. We watched entire cities being herded into processing plants. Like I said, everything was a resource. All biomass was converted to foodstuffs, and then all arable land was turned into crops. The speed at which they could convert a system into a new staging area was staggering. After that, we had new orders. Resist at any cost. We were all mesmerized. Are you sure that is only bourbon, Captain? The first officer joked. We all chuckled. The captain ignored us. By then, we were all fighting holding actions, trying to slow them down long enough for the core systems to build up a big enough fleet to stem the tide. System by system, ship by ship. He looked at his first officer. That's when the Dunhauser rammed that dreadnought, broke its back, he sighed. It's a pity about the other 5 dreadnoughts. And you remember this, sir? Yes. But at the same time, I remember the twins, the divorce, stalking pirates in the Crab Nebula. It's a strange feeling. But why are you telling us this now, sir? That's the strange bit. I remember all that, including the 5th Fleet being ordered to make a stand at a mining outpost on the Mino side. We were told that the system should not be taken at all cost. The Hunsec had suddenly diverted to that system for no apparent reason. The planet was barely livable hellhole, with an extremely energetic ionosphere, a large asteroid belt outside of it, and a number of small captured asteroids as wounds. It was a total nightmare to wage an interplanetary war near it. We spent weeks fighting a war of attrition around it, soaking up the Hunsec advance. I was assigned to a fast-attack frigate sloop John. We scuttled it after its drive was damaged beyond repair, and dropped planetside. If we could not halt their advance in space, we'd delay it on the ground. We were deployed with a mix of colonial marines and local militia, and we spent the next few months fighting them for every inch of that damned hellhole. The captain sipped from his glass. We all realized he'd also stopped drinking and quickly did the same. That's when it happened. What happened, sir? One moment I was manning an ancient heavy machine gun in a bunker. Next, I was sitting on the bridge of a patrol frigate. My patrol frigate. You lost us, sir. I suddenly had 2 conflicting memories. In one, I was fighting for my life against an alien horde, and in another, I'd received my own command and spent my last few years chasing smugglers and pirates. Don't forget the twins. We all laughed. I was confused for a few days, then shrugged it off. But the memory still remained. Eventually, I saw someone about it. They had no real explanation about it, except to suggest a psychotic break or a maladaptive daydreaming. The table looked at each other and shifted uncomfortably. This was a heavy talk. But none of those fit. I never had another episode or event, just those 5 years of memory overlapping 5 completely different ones. Great story, sir, but why are you telling us this now, after 15 years? The captain looked at us. Because it really happened. Remember the new head of station security? Yes, ex-military big guy. Former colonial marine, to be exact. I remember meeting him at Nemo Sign. We fought together for over 4 months. He was next to me in that bunker when it happened. The captain took another sip. But I also remember never meeting him before yesterday. What does that mean, sir? He recognized me. You lost us, sir. He recognized me. He remembered me. We had never met before, and he quickly covered it up. But he remembered me. I spent some of the most stressful moments of my life next to him. I could read him like a book. I shivered. The room suddenly felt smaller. Last night, I waited for him outside his quarters, and the first thing he asked me is if I remembered. We had wondered where the old man had disappeared to. Thought he had an old flame on the station we did not know of. He pulled me aside and led me to an empty storage locker. Only then did he admit that he remembered all of it. The Hunsec, the war, the damned planet. We looked at each other, worried. How is that possible, sir? He spent his career in the Marines, eventually moving to intelligence, like me. He also thought that it was some kind of psychotic break. But he knew more about Mnemosyne than I did. The reason that we were ordered to defend it at all costs was because the mining outpost was a cover for an advanced weapons lab. He did some discreet digging and found out that a number of the staff of the lab had passed away. Nothing strange. One in his sleep, EVA accident, rock climbing, and one senior researcher committed suicide after some scandals involving underage boys and plagiarism. Strangely enough, he had been the senior physicist studying gravity and its effects on time. But none of these published research papers were available anywhere, not even hard copies. Eventually, he was able to track down some of our squad mates and chat to them, discreetly. All of the ones that were alive when it happened remembered. None of the others did, and no one off-planet. A few who had been vocal about what happened had been hospitalized, and there had also been a few deaths amongst them. That's when he toned down his investigation. But he slowly pieced together what happened over the years. What was it, sir? The war was close to lost. Even on the ground, you could tell that. So, out of desperation, the Brass approved the use of an experimental weapon that reached back in time. We groaned, really, sir? You almost had us. Sorry, kids. I'm dead serious. The concept was sound, but the effect was unpredictable and difficult to target. That is when the astronomer on the team suggested targeting the 6 stars. Stop their formation. No Hunsec. Their influence was only 5 years on the local area of space, so the knock-on effect would be minimal. A few billion lives would not be lost, etc. And they were desperate. They burned through billions to build the device and had only one shot. But the inner systems were close to being invaded, so they activated it. But that is not how time travel works, sir, even if it was possible. That is what they hoped. This was not time travel. They deployed the weapon. The Hunsec never existed. A new timeline is formed. The weapon never gets built. Closed loop. But it seems time is more complicated than we thought. Everyone in close proximity to the device retained their original memories, as well as the new timeline's memories. He sighed. Almost everyone left on the planet remembered. And that is where it gets messy. A few top brass who were there quickly set up a heavily classified briefing. Usually a tale like this would have been laughed out of the building. But this time, there were more than enough people to testify, including the research team, especially the head scientist. He was quite proud of his achievements and even suggested a more refined system. The captain looked at his glass and poured in more bourbon, his hand shaking a little. Some less desperate and smarter minds took one look at what happened and realized the ramifications. A weapon like that could be devastating in the long term. There was no scenario where it would not be a threat to the entire universe, so they decided to squash it from existence. Luckily, everything was in the memories of some people, and people are expendable. Slowly, over the years, anyone who might look like they remembered met an unfortunate death. All research was wiped from history. Even the research station was turned into a real mine before Mnemosyne was abandoned for being too risky and expensive. This conversation was really taking a dark turn. But why are you telling us this now, sir? I just heard. The station's new head of security passed away in his sleep last night. I've been very discreet about my memories. Never told anyone except my therapist and a backwater planet I was not even officially on. But I may have overplayed my hand last night. We shifted uncomfortably. I don't know what will happen next. Maybe nothing, but I thought someone should know. And with that, he finished his glass and stood up. We all came to attention. Good night, gentlemen. I'm off to my bunk. The captain left. We looked at each other, and some laughed. That was one hell of a tale, the first officer said with a chuckle. I've heard a few good ones over the years, but that was a big one. We all laughed at him and changed the subject. Soon after, the first officer also left. I waited a little, then also made my way to the ship. I moved to my station and started the night watch. As soon as I was certain everyone was on board and asleep, I snuck off ship, off to see a girl I'd met the previous night. And it would be my lucky night to do that. A coolant leak will flood the ship in the next hour, getting everyone in their sleep. I would have preferred only the captain, but you know what they say about people and memories. End of story. I'd quickly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.